After waiting for Redfern to reawaken and spending a few hours to rest and heal, we returned to the shoddy laboratory at the beginning of the cave system, about to depart. There, we found that a segment of the northern wall had slid away, revealing an open doorway to the north and back out into the swamp. Exiting the cave and approaching a large, open area from the south, we could see hundreds upon hundreds of large swamp monsters congregated here, assembled as if part of a large army. Indeed, standing atop a 20-foot rocky outcropping facing all the monsters was an elderly human, strong magic emanating from his outstretched hands. It appeared that we had finally found Lowdiz. However, he seemed to be controlling the assemblage of creatures, perhaps preparing them for an imminent attack upon EAA. We had reached the endgame here and it was time to act. Let's try to sneak a little closer and see what's going on, I suggested, pointing toward the base of the small rocky outcropping where we could potentially hide ourselves. Taking my advice, the party cautiously continued north, staying undercover and getting as close to the rocky outcropping containing Lowdiz as we dared. Now just 50 feet or so away, we could see that Lowdiz seemed to have all the swamp monsters under his direct mental control. As the menagerie of beasts stepped, flew, and crawled around before us, we spotted two additional threats, a small group of shambling mounds that also seemed to be controlling the monsters here and a pair of young black dragons flying about, likely the children of the black dragon mother we met back in the cave to the northwest. All right, Lontora, what's the play here? Eswin asked, waiting for orders. We should retreat for now, I answered, unprepared for the sheer magnitude of monsters before us. Now that we know what's happening here, a retreat isn't a bad idea, Sainairs commented, in agreement. We can regroup and come up with a plan. About to retreat, Ariana felt a mosquito biting her on the arm and slapped at it. Both Sainairs and Redfern felt similar bites and slapped at them, and quickly we were busily swatting at dozens of biting insects, surprising all of us. Attacking was a random insect swarm and we had no choice but to react. Damning our bad luck, we drove the swarm away, hoping that we hadn't revealed ourselves here to the nearby monster army. Yet that was exactly what had happened. We had exposed ourselves here, a wide variety of monsters leaping, crawling, and flying now in our direction. Turning to flee, the path back to the south quickly closed as well. Our party was completely surrounded. Damn bugs! Eswin cursed, the insect swarm we had defeated having the last laugh it seemed. It only took a few frantic moments for the monster army to surround us. Expecting a painful and bloody end, my heroes drew into a small, defensive circle, back to back and weapons ready. Approaching to just a few dozen yards, the monsters halted their advance, still eager to rip the flesh from our bones but, for some reason, maintaining their distance. The old wizard Lowdiz then stepped toward us from out of the monstrous army. Just as curious with us as we were with him, the bearded magic user reached us and spoke, his voice tired and raspy. An adventuring party, how unexpected. I suppose you've come to stop me. No, we're actually here to save you. Eswin cautiously yet honestly responded. Save me? Lowdiz asked, quite surprised. Save me from what? This entire army that I command? What are you really here for? Your daughter Voxar sent us, Kartha boldly replied, getting right to the point. She loves you and is worried for you. To my surprise, Lowdiz hung his head and drew a deep breath, the thought of his daughter quite meaningful. I told her to stay out of this, the old wizard replied, almost with a whisper. This was always something I had to do, she needed to stay out of it. What are you doing here? Eswin asked, needing to understand. Are you really here to attack EAA? The sexist government here in Genland must fall. The wizard responded in sudden anger. It's not natural for women to control like this, to not let men into their lives, to break their hearts on a whim. I will finally put a stop to it. That sounds sexist, wizard, Kartha condemned. The sisters here in Genland may be different in thinking, but they're not hurting anyone and it's their choice to make. Who are you to take away what thousands of brave and resourceful women over centuries have built? You can't possibly understand. Lowdiz countered, taking a step in Kartha's direction. I lost the love of my life to this way of life. We were in love, deep, passionate, total love. And then she walked away, left me in my sorrow, to come to this place and reject me as the only man who ever truly loved her. I have hated this country for over 50 years now, it's time to destroy it. Instead of punishing all the women here, why can't you just talk to the one you still love and try to make amends? Kartha asked, perhaps naively. Focus on what's really important. Surprisingly, Lowdiz seemed unable to respond. Perhaps Kartha was more right than she realized. Delphana, my love, the magic user whispered, lost in his painful memories. Queen Delphana was the bride you lost so long ago, wasn't she? The mutant asked with compassion, taking the hand of Lowdiz. And you mourn that loss, even decades later. Lowdiz bowed his head even further, the truth obvious. It wasn't hard to sense that Lowdiz still deeply loved and cared for Queen Delphana, even though she utterly broke his heart more than a half-century ago. If love and hate were truly two sides of the same coin, Lowdiz was making that very clear. The powerful wizard took a deep breath, then stepped forward as if to continue the conversation and further share his story. A moment later, however, Lowdiz suddenly grabbed his head, as if someone had just driven a nail through it. Unsure of what to do, I noticed that not only had all the swamp monsters moved closer but now several shambling mounds stood nearby, focused on Lowdiz. Then, the young black dragons circling above landed nearby as well, quickly joining the circle of monsters surrounding us. Yes, I know. Lowdiz whispered to himself, the pain in his head immense. I know, you are my masters. I will obey. The magic user stood tall again, his eyes now glowing an evil red, almost as if he were suddenly possessed. Lowdiz then began to mumble, the words difficult for him but soul-chilling nonetheless. All of you must now die. Surrounded by 3 shambling mounds, 2 young black dragons and an army of swamp creatures as well as a suddenly erratic Lowdiz, I had a fateful choice to make: attack Lowdiz before he could use his immense magic against us, attack the shambling mounds instead, or simply surrender to the swamp creatures here and beg for mercy. Those shambliers, they're controlling Lowdiz, I concluded, pointing toward the 3 vegetative monsters just 25 feet or so away. Attack them. Without hesitation, my party lunged in their direction, leaving me alone with Lowdiz. The mighty wizard about to hit me with some furious spell, the glowing redness in his eyes suddenly disappeared and he looked to me, confused. The shambling mounds, they're no longer controlling me. Then, to my surprise, several of the closer marshland creatures turned away as if being called elsewhere. Soon the entire army was moving away, heading east, and toward EAA. While that was good news, I still had several extremely powerful monsters to contend with. The Chamblier generals, they're calling the main force away to begin their assault on EAA, Lowdiz recognized, his concern obvious. I've run out of time. Lowdiz looked to me, then back at the Chambliers as my party engaged them, the 2 young black dragons about to attack us as well. You found my notes. The wizard grinned, impressed with me. When I enlarged the Chambliers, I accidentally enlarged their brains as well and they somehow took full mental control of me. But I am free now, I am forever in your debt. Lowdiz smiled, his fortunes suddenly turned. Go help your friends. Lowdiz ordered, turning to leave. I will take care of the dragons. Before I could respond, the wizard turned for the 2 black dragons, an incredible act of bravery it appeared. Taking the magic user's advice, I then joined my party against the shambling mounds, the vile creatures quite the enemies. The 3 Chambliers appeared as heaps of rotting vegetation with an 8-foot girth, about 6 feet tall and weighing 2 tons each. Roughly humanoid in appearance, they were quite intelligent, carnivorous plants with sensory organs located within their upper body. Like their smaller shambling mound brethren, they attacked with 2 huge arm-like appendages and could often constrict their opponents as well, rendering them unable to do anything for several minutes. As we fought the shambling mounds, they also attempted to mind control us, their brains enhanced by the magic of Lowdiz and the creatures even more deadly. Red Fern soon fell prey to the mind control, but we were able to quickly destroy the Chamblier controlling him, releasing the wizard from the monster's grip. While the battle lasted several more gut-wrenching minutes, the 2 remaining shambling mounds soon dropped to the ground and we breathed a big sigh of relief in having defeated them. Finally able to turn my attention back to Lowdiz, I was almost shocked to see both of the young black dragons kneeling before him, apparently in total submission. Joining the powerful magic user moments later, I listened to him in utter fascination. These 2 pups came to me a short time ago, willing to lead my monstrous army against EAA. They'll do anything I tell them and I've ordered them to stand down. You no longer want to overthrow the Sisters of EAA? Kartha asked, surprised. The government of Genland does need removal, Lowdiz answered back, about to prepare a spell. But not like this. My plan was only to threaten Queen Delphana, not annihilate the entire city. Take care of the dragons, I need to save Delphana. The two black dragons continuing to respect the control of Lowdiz over them, we watched as the wizard cast a teleport spell and was instantly gone, leaving us alone with the dragons. Kartha then bravely approached both, something clearly on her mind. The two of you. We spoke to your mother, up in the cave to the northwest. She misses you terribly. Please, go back to her, console her, and bring back the two most important things in her life. Go, be with your mother. The two dragons looked at one another, then took to the air, circling a few times before flying north, presumably back to their cave. Let me get this straight, Eswin asked, trying to understand what had just happened. This Lowdiz we've been seeking wants to overthrow the government here in Genland all because he once loved Queen Delphana, and even now wants her back? Maybe he still blames the way of life here for attracting her away from him, Kartha responded. But for the moment, that has to wait. We need to reach EAA and put a stop to this war. My heroes in agreement, it was time to find a place to cross the river to the east and see what we could do to help the sisters in EAA. The large open area of the marshland now quiet, a well-trodden path led away to the northeast toward the river separating the swamp from the city of EAA. We had no time to lose. Racing north to follow the marshland army that departed recently to lay siege to the all-female city of EAA, we reached the far corner of the swamp, a wide river separating the marshland to the west from the capital city to the east. In the distance, we could see the whole of the marshland army attacking the city. We needed to swim across the river and engage them as quickly as possible. Can everyone swim? Ariana asked, scanning the riverbank here for the best place to cross. All the heroes in my party nodded affirmatively, although it would be a struggle for those wearing armor. Accordingly, Ariana found an old log nearby and retrieved it, giving everyone something to cling to as we began to cross, the river about 100 yards wide and difficult to negotiate. Swimming across the shallow river from the marshland to the west, we reached the southwestern corner of the city about a half hour later, emerging alongside the EAA jailhouse and gallows. We had come full circle. However, the whole of the swamp army was arriving as well, hundreds of giant crabs, flies, frogs, leeches, spiders, water termites, roaches, mosquitoes, praying mantises, snails and wasps attacking the city with surprising fury. The citizens of EAA as well as guards were already defending the city, but it sure looked like the women here had to fight for their very lives. Standing there catching my breath and looking about, I noticed that much of the city's defensive force was engaged in heavy combat just to the east in what appeared to be the EAA arena. Delphana, she's there, to the east. Kartha cried out, spotting her from the distance. Hurry, they're attacking her. About to leap forward, we were suddenly surrounded by a variety of marshland creatures, 2 giant crabs, 3 giant leeches and 3 giant termites. While we were already familiar with the giant crabs, giant leeches were slimy, segmented worm-like creatures that were 6 feet long and lived in all kinds of water, salt or fresh, clean or stagnant. Worse, once a giant leech bit one of us, it attached itself to the victim and sucked its blood, doing additional damage until defeated. Giant termites varied from 3 to 5 feet in length and attacked using a noxious spray with a range of 5 feet that stunned its target for about 10 minutes. While a nominal threat to us, the real threat imposed by giant termites was to wooden structures such as buildings and sailing ships. My party still at relatively full strength, we quickly defeated the marshland monsters and headed northeast toward the EAA arena some 250 yards away. Fighting our way back to the arena, the field had become a massive battleground with the majority of the EAA defensive force fighting the many giant marshland monsters that had invaded the city. There is the Queen. Ariana cried out, pointing in a particular direction. Fighting bravely alongside her fellow guardswomen, Queen Delphana had just conjured an effective lightning bolt but remained almost trapped by hundreds of monsters separating us from her. To reach the Queen, we would need to fight our way through several waves of the beasts. Quickly, 3 giant mosquitoes, 3 giant snails, 2 giant wasps and a swamp monster attacked our party, fighting ferociously. We had already encountered giant snails, giant wasps, and swamp monsters before, but the giant mosquitoes were new to us. Similar to the giant leeches we had just defeated, the giant mosquitoes could also attach themselves to us upon a successful hit, draining our blood until destroyed. Defeating the closest enlarged beasts, along with the swamp monster that controlled them, we managed to fight our way closer toward Queen Delphana and the EAA guards, a quarter of whom already lay dead or gravely wounded all about the arena field here. We managed to cut the distance to Delpana roughly in half when another group of enlarged monsters descended upon us, the terrible battle here nowhere close to being resolved. This time, 3 giant flies, 3 giant tarantulas, an insect swarm and a lesser shambling mound assaulted our party. We had faced giant tarantulas, insect swarms and lesser shambling mounds before, but the giant flies were new to us, banded yellow and black, and sometimes mistaken for giant bees. The giant flies were certainly predators and difficult to defeat. My exhausted heroes managed to defeat the latest round of monsters and we continued our way toward Queen Delpana, she and her guards now nearly within reach. Are you responsible for these monsters? A familiar voice suddenly cried out. Standing there was Nira, the captain of the guard, her armor drenched in the guts and goo of many swamp fiends. About to reply, yet another wave of monsters attacked, this one even more powerful. Assaulting us were 2 ballroaches, 2 giant leeches, 2 giant praying mantises and 2 lesser shambling mounds. Familiar with all the monsters except for the ballroaches, we quickly learned that they were a variety of giant cockroach larger than a horse and immune to all poisons and diseases. In addition to its bite, ballroaches also exuded a horrible smell, rendering several of us nauseous during the battle. We defeated the monsters, but the battle was far from over. From our perspective, there just weren't enough soldiers here to defend against all the marshland monsters and things looked grim. Drawing upon our party's strength and success, however, Nira and her remaining guards instinctively drew closer to us, allowing both groups to protect each other's backs as yet another horde of creatures descended upon us. This time, 2 giant tarantulas, 2 giant termites, 2 giant wasps, 2 insect swarms and 2 swamp monsters descended upon us, all monsters we had seen before but still exceedingly difficult to destroy. Soon, however, the last of the 4th wave was somehow defeated and for a moment we tried to catch our breath. The attacks now subsided. Just as Nira and our party reached the queen, so did Lowdiz, the brave wizard himself, quite fatigued in having battled his way to the arena here as well. Lowdiz? Queen Delpana called out from perhaps 10 yards away. Is that really you? Lowdiz turned and rushed directly to her, the queen utterly shocked despite the desperate battle all around. The two then immediately embraced, their affection for one another as obvious as it was surprising. How did you escape? Delpana asked, tenderly brushing away the hair of Lowdiz. These heroes rescued me. Lowdiz returned, himself holding Delpana's face in his hands. We've come to save you. Why would you do that? Delpana asked with painful honesty. We banished you, thought you were dead. Why risk your life to save us after all the terrible things we did to you? You know why, Lowdiz softly answered with a gentle smile. I love you. What are those? Nira suddenly cried out, pointing toward the south. Yet another horde of enlarged monsters assaulted us, a trio of Chamblier generals arriving as well, quite literally the brains controlling the entire marshland army. The tall, vegetative monstrosities appeared extremely formidable, but if we could somehow defeat them, we would likely break the control they had upon their entire swamp army. Nira barked out her orders and the remaining EAA soldiers formed a defensive circle around Lowdiz and Delpana. The old wizard bravely turned toward the Chambliers, intent on defeating them single-handedly if he must. Stand back, my love. I am responsible for these creatures, I will deal with them myself. No, I will not. Delpana defiantly cried in return. You've just returned to me, I am not going to let you go now. As Queen Delpana prepared to join Lowdiz in battle, she suddenly started screaming in agony as if something were attacking her from within. All of us looked dumbfounded, trying desperately to understand what was happening. The pain utterly intense, Delpana then began to remove her armor, ripping it off as if it would somehow help. Seeing this, Lowdiz jumped forward and helped her tear off her breastplate as well, revealing her undergarments, which seemed to be wiggling on their own. The woman continued to scream in pain, prompting Nira to help remove more armor. Delpana's armor removed, I could now see what was causing her so much pain. Twisting all about her torso, arms, and legs were several thick, woody vines containing numerous white roses, and the vines had a mind of their own. Containing a variety of sharp thorns, the vines were not only ripping into the queen's flesh but constricting her as well, causing horrible pain. Shocked by the discovery, I stared at the vines for a moment, trying to understand what was going on. A blood rose. Lowdiz mumbled, recognizing the vines as a dimly sentient creature that had apparently been controlling Queen Delpana all along. Now exposed, the vines further constricted Delpana and gashed deeper into her flesh. The blood rose was about to kill her. Enough! Delphana cried out as she turned toward Lowdiz with seeming hatred again. The blood rose too much for her to resist any longer. Die, man thing! The blood rose vines forcing her to do its will again. Delphana struck Lowdiz with some sort of paralysis magic, freezing him in place. At the same time, the three Chambliers ordered all their monsters to attack as well, the vegetative creatures beginning their assault upon our party too. The final battle here had begun. Well, take the giants, Nira ordered, her guards turning to attack the various monsters headed our way. You deal with the Chambliers. Once again, my party had to face off against three shambling mounds, these ones the actual generals of the swamp army and nearly all-powerful. Even worse, Queen Delphana joined the Chambliers against us, hitting us with several lightning bolts before we could engage her in hand-to-hand combat. Already greatly wounded and our spells all but exhausted, we had to fight like never before, leveraging all our combined strength, spellcasting, and even magical items to face and defeat the Chambliers. The final battle lasted nearly 15 minutes, but then the last of the shambling mounds went down, their hold upon all the giant creatures here severed as well. My party forced to defeat Queen Delphana as well. Lowdiz, no longer paralyzed, leaped to her, the blood rose vines still in control. As we gathered to watch, Lowdiz tore desperately at the vines, ripping his own fingers open in the process. It's no use. You can't defeat them. Delphana whispered, her life ending. I've tried all these years, they're just too strong. It was these damn blood roses controlling you, all these years? Lowdiz cursed, on the verge of tears. They're the reason you left me so long ago. They've been feeding off me, off all of us, anyone with the stamp, Delphana returned. I was just too powerless to stop them. Goodbye, my love. And with that, the eyes of Delphana closed and her body went limp, the queen passing away before our very eyes. Nuu! Lowdiz screamed, unwilling to accept her death. I waited half a century for you, I am not letting you go now. Grabbing both her hands with his own, Lowdiz closed his eyes and began a spell, a chant I had never seen recited before. Moments later the old wizard began to convulse, pain welling up within him, and I sensed the magic inside was not just extraordinarily powerful but that it was actually killing him. The wizard concentrated further, then cried out in one final outburst before slumping unconscious alongside Delphana, his spell apparently a failure. Nira knelt alongside Lowdiz and checked his pulse, shaking her head. It appeared the spell he was casting had claimed his life as well. A moment later, Queen Delphana slowly stirred, and to my utter amazement she opened her eyes and looked up to me. My queen! Nira shouted, slowly helping her to sit up. How? The resurrected woman looked tenderly at Lowdiz lying beside her, touching him alongside his cheek. She then stood at her feet, completely rejuvenated. Indeed, she now looked several decades younger. Literally a new woman. Delphana took a deep breath and looked all around. The Chambliers' control over the giant creatures severed, all of them were now fleeing from the city, EAA had been saved. Yet the blood rose encasing the queen like a lattice continued to wiggle about, still attempting to influence its own control. The queen grinned with a new sense of power and confidence, then magically attacked the blood rose growing about her, causing the vines to burst into flame and fall destroyed at her feet. Delphana had freed herself from their control. Delphana's sudden resurrection and youthful restoration seemed impossible. Yet, I had seen this before, when Sandaria transferred her own living soul into the crystal statue just before the onyx seal was destroyed back in the Evil Root Forest. This time, Lowdiz had transferred his own living energy to Delphana, not just saving her life but entwining the two past lovers now for eternity. Is that true? Nira asked, bewildered. Are the two of you now entwined? Yes, I very much feel him within me, Delphana responded, her voice a bit deeper now. He was a stubborn fool, but he never gave up on us. Where we were powerless to defeat the blood rose separately, we did so in an instant together. He always sensed your pain, Kartha added, impressed but not surprised by the sacrifice of Lowdiz. He didn't understand why, but he knew you were suffering, which is why he tried to rescue you. What does all this mean? Nira asked, confused by what she had just witnessed. Change. Delphana responded, taking charge again. There will be some changes here in Genland, beginning with the acceptance of all genders. It's time for us to open our borders to all who wish to come here. I also want an immediate inspection of all the white roses here in EAA. Queen Delphana ordered. Destroy anything suspicious. And no more stamping as well, I've had my fill of white roses. Right away. Nira responded, ordering several of her guards to spread the word and begin the systematic review of all the white roses throughout the city. Delphana nodded her head and ordered Nira to lead the cleanup of EAA as well, recognizing that it would take some time to recover from the monstrous attacks and rebuild the city. As for all of you, Delphana said after aside to me, there are things that I, Lowdiz, want to discuss with you, back at the power tower. Go rest and recover, then come see me when you're ready to leave EAA. My heroes nodded in agreement. Delphana then ordered her guards back to the power tower to the north, departing quickly as the city in general began the cleaning up process. And that's a wrap of episode number 34, Army of Lowdiz. Expect additional episodes every few weeks as the story continues.